By 1763, the Seven Years' War ends with a total British victory. France surrenders 3 million square miles, leaving Britain the undisputed master of North America. But victory brings a massive financial burden, and the newly won frontier is immediately threatened by native revolts. For over a century, the colonies were left to manage their own affairs in a period of salutary neglect. Prime Minister George Grenville decides this must end, proposing that the colonies begin paying for their defense through the sugar and stamp acts. The financial request is modest. One calculation shows a New Englander paying a single shilling in tax for every 26 paid by a Briton. However, because the colonists have no representation in Parliament, they argue these acts trample their rights as British subjects. A mathematical debt crisis has triggered an ideological struggle over sovereignty. The dispute is no longer about the amount being taxed, but who has the legal authority to govern in North America. Colonial resistance is immediate and often violent. Groups like the Sons of Liberty organize boycotts of British goods, while mobs beat and intimidate tax collectors, forcing many to resign or flee. In March 1770, a tense standoff between British soldiers and a Boston crowd turns lethal. When the soldiers fire into the mob, killing 5 men, the event is immediately weaponized as patriot propaganda to inflame the public. Defiance reaches a peak in 1773. To protest a new tax on tea, members of the Sons of Liberty board 3 company ships and destroyed 92,000 pounds of tea, nearly $2 million in today's currency. Britain responds with the coercive acts. They shut down Boston's port, impose strict military rule, and send 4,000 occupying troops. The colonies rally in support of Massachusetts. In September 1774, 56 delegates meet at the First Continental Congress to coordinate a unified boycott and draft a formal list of grievances to King George III. The rigid action-reaction cycle has closed. What began as a managed dispute over revenue has expanded into a continent-wide political rebellion. The standoff breaks in April 1775. As British troops march to Concord to seize militia munitions, they are intercepted at Lexington. A single unidentified shot triggers a flurry of fire, marking the first clash of the war. The British march back to Boston turns into a shambolic retreat under constant ambush from thousands of local militia. By nightfall, 15,000 colonists have encircled the city, beginning a 10-month siege. The Second Continental Congress must now function as a wartime government. They vote to raise loans, issue bills of credit, and establish a formal Continental Army to absorb the regional militias. For a leader, they turn to George Washington. A veteran of the French and Indian War, Washington accepts the command, facing the task of professionalizing an army that lacks everything from gunpowder to basic discipline. The early campaigns are brutal and inconsistent. At Bunker Hill, the Americans prove they can stand against British regulars, but a subsequent invasion of Canada ends in a disastrous, plague-ridden retreat from Quebec. The Patriots have established a fighting spirit, yet the logistical reality remains grim. Without a steady supply of ammunition and professional training, the rebellion cannot survive a formal, prolonged war. Ideological momentum peaks in the summer of 1776. Thomas Paine's pamphlet Common Sense sells over 100,000 copies, persuading ordinary citizens that a full break from the British monarchy is the only solution. On the 4th of July, Congress formally adopts the Declaration of Independence. The colonies are no longer protesting British subjects. They are now 13 independent states at war. Britain meets this declaration with the largest expeditionary force it has ever assembled. A fleet of 400 ships carrying 32,000 soldiers arrives in New York, a force that completely dwarfs Washington's fractured defense. The Battle of Long Island is a catastrophe for the Americans. Outflanked and beaten, Washington only avoids total surrender by conducting a desperate nighttime evacuation across the East River under a fortuitous fog. A cascading collapse follows. New York burns, major American forts fall, and the Continental Army dissolves into a stream of retreating fugitives as thousands of soldiers desert or return home. By the end of 1776, the whiplash is complete. Declaring independence on paper is a hollow victory if the army enforcing that claim is being systematically annihilated on the battlefield. By December, Washington has fewer than 6,000 men remaining. Freezing and depleted by disease, The army has retreated across the Delaware River, their situation appearing entirely hopeless. British General Howe offers a full pardon to any rebel who swears an oath of allegiance to the king. With American enlistment set to expire on New Year's Day, the revolution is likely weeks away from total dissolution. Washington decides to risk the entire rebellion on one bold strike. He plans a complex nighttime crossing of the Delaware to hit the Hessian garrison at Trenton before the army can disappear. On Christmas night, his men board flat-bottomed boats to cross nearly 300 yards of ice-choked water during a blinding winter blizzard. The attack is a total success. The Hessians are routed at Trenton, followed days later by another victory over British forces at Princeton. Washington has seized the initiative just as the cause was ready to collapse. These skirmishes are incredibly small by European standards, but they provide the vital psychological and tactical proof the Patriots need. The Continental Army has shown it can survive the winter and win against professional troops. Surviving this crucible brings the American cause to the attention of France and Spain. Their support transforms a localized tax revolt into a global war, permanently altering the balance of world power.